Recorded the first episode, with someone else. It was very good. It was very well received. I felt myself, I have also this, I discovered another skill that I have.
Yeah.
Knowledge sharing in the technology specifically, it opens other people's mind, right?
Yes.
People ask me why you do this, right? And why you share this? Because I believe, every one of us should have, of course, maybe you have it now, you don't have it now, I don't know, but should have this long-term vision and purpose, right? For me, my biggest, ambition, I would say, and goals is to be able to leave kind of a legacy for people to find the information easy.
Yeah.
I always felt that an engineer, or a tech guy should do more than just the tech stuff, right? The curiosity played a role here because I always wanted to see, the other side of the table. Sometimes I wasn't understanding, for example, how people take decision to adopt a technology, right? So this is where I started to, dive myself into some other areas other than the technology, of course. So let it be sales, marketing, go-to-market, market validation, and this is, it became a passion for me to understand that.
Welcome to this week's episode of Akoni Tech Talks. We are joined by Mehmet today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Francisca. Nice to be here with you today.
There's so much to talk about today, Mehmet, but I'd love to kind of start from the beginning. So can you take us back and share when your interest in tech and IT first started?
Yeah, sure. Again, thank you for having me on the podcast today, Francisca. It's an honor to be with you. So my story with technology goes long way back to my childhood, I would say. Of course, there was nothing called IT at that time. Maybe I'm not that old, but just to make the story. So I got interested in anything electronics at the beginning, and then I started to see interest in computers and all stuff like this. Later on, when I was in my first or second year at college or university, as you call it, so I got attracted to networks and how internet is working, all this. So I'm talking about 2000 2001. So here in the Middle East, like it was the next new thing, so the internet, and everyone wanted to get hand on. So this is where I started. Actually, I studied also computer engineering, so I'm an engineer by trade, I would say. Yeah, and it's been a fun journey because technology for me is something that pushes us always forward, like makes us, get a better life and so on. So yeah, and here we go. Like now, I think I completed officially kind of since 2000. I would say I started in 2000. So now it's been
Wow.
like 24 years of technology experience.
And so with over 2 decades in tech, that's very impressive. But what would you say have been some of the key moments or experiences that have shaped your career and your professional journey?
Sure. So now, in addition to my passion to technology, I am kind of a big believer in these, aha moment that happens not only for the persons or individuals, like for all of us on this globe. So I've witnessed, and I was lucky enough to witness like some inventions, some of them I was like still too young, to understand, and some of them like, I start to see how the technology would be able to shape. So few of them, of course, they are like the traditional ones. The internet, like for me, this was like the big moment. Of course, I've heard about the internet when I was 13 years old, that, like 1993. But the first time I put my hand on it was like I was 18 years old, and I said, oh, wow, like we can communicate now on a larger scale.
Yeah.
And I expected it like to be the next big thing, and to boom, and it happened. Later on, what happened also, the move of the smartphones, right? So smartphones, when I first saw the Android operating system, like I was mind blown. You're putting an operating system on a very small device, and then Apple introduced, of course, the touch screen. So was the next big thing I've seen, and I knew like it's gonna be, continuing in the future. The one I think which didn't shape me, but of course I believe it's one of the key things that pushed us forward, which is the social media, like the Facebooks and the Twitters and, all what came after that. And here we go now, we are with the AI, which I think it's like also a pivotal moment for all us as humans.
Absolutely. And in your professional journey, what would you say some of the biggest challenges have been that you've faced in tech or a startup landscape, and how have you overcome them?
So I would make it a little bit regional, I would say.
Mm.
So I'm a big believer in tech, so maybe now the audience, they would know about that by now. The main, I would say, challenge or maybe impatience for me, I would say. So when I believe in a tech, I used to expect that people will follow very fast, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it was kind of, oh, why they are not following, it's kind of like being upset of being not getting, the point of the technology. Of course, with time, I started to understand, and there's something, called the chasm, when you have the early adopters and then you have, later on the majority that start to, and you have the late adopters also as well. Mm-hmm. So once I understood this curve, it's now for me not a challenge anymore. So this is the first one I can think about. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to startups, and again, it's the same as the tech. So when you are a startup, and I was lucky enough to work with many of the fantastic startups that came up in the IT space. Yeah. Of course, the main challenge, and this is very normal, and now I tell founders about it. So you have an idea, you believe in it, but don't expect people to tell you yes, right? So for me, getting the no's, especially when I was younger, was kind of something I couldn't grasp, I would say. But of course, with time and experience, and I believe things happen for a reason. So I would say these are the two things. Now, coming a little bit regionally, and it's changing, by the way. So our region, usually people, they look at it, at the Middle East and North Africa. So they looked at us as, we are late adopters for tech. And this was a challenge, because when I used to, for example, write to some of these, tech companies, hey, I think you should come here, there's an opportunity for you. Oh no, your market is slow, people, they don't adopt technology fast. Now, good thing is we are moving faster than before, and we are actually now leading, when it comes to the digital economies, and all these transformations that have happened. So this is what I would say.
You obviously have a very deep technical knowledge as well, but how has that sort of shaped your approach to strategy or even mentorship with startup businesses?
Yeah, sure. Although, as I said, I'm an engineer by trade, I always felt that an engineer, or a tech guy should do more than just the tech stuff, right? And this is why, the curiosity played a role here, because I always wanted to see, the other side of the table, right? Mm-hmm. So I was on the tech side, so sometimes I wasn't understanding, for example, how people take decision to adopt a technology, right? Mm-hmm. So, or let's say if today I write a piece of code, right? I write a software. So I think it's good, but how do I know that people will buy it, right? So this is where I started to, dive myself into some other areas other than the technology, of course. So let it be sales, marketing, go-to-market, market validation, and this is, it became a passion for me to understand. And I think I've seen every single technical person who later changed also, I'm not saying change their career path, it's more like they evolved into more business or techno-commercial roles. They thrived because you always have this technical analytics in your mind, so everything you think about as zeros and ones and, in a logical way. But when it comes to dealing with people, you're dealing with emotions and you're dealing with, different aspect than when you deal with a machine. Mm-hmm. So merging these two, for me, it became something which I became passionate about. And this is why, I'm very oriented when it comes to letting the business understand the advantage of a technology. So when I talk to startups, if we want to talk about startups, so the first question I ask them, it's beautiful, you have AI, you have this, you have that, but from a business perspective, so the guy who's gonna pay you money, you need to show them something which they can understand in their language. So what is it? So this is where I would say, I built this mix of, business acumen and deep technology experience.
And you've touched on that ability to kind of bridge the gap between the technology and the businesses, but what advice would you give to founders on balancing their kind of product development with the market needs and business growth?
There is, I'm very big fan of Steve Blank, right? So he always talks about going out of the building, right? It's easy now. You and me sit down and we get the napkin and we start to put some ideas and we start to put the hypotheses that okay, if we go out to the market with this product, it's gonna rock, right? It's easy, right? Nothing wrong with this, by the way, but it's the next step that should happen right after you get your idea and you get excited about it. Congratulations, you found an idea you're passionate about, you believe in it, excellent. You need to go and start talk to people. And this is what we call it validation, right? And be prepared, because maybe what you thought it's a cool idea, where maybe it's like the next generation technology idea, when you go out to the market and the people will tell you, hey, you know what? We don't really need it. So you need to have also this adaptability and flexibility also as well. Again, don't build any solution, whether like it's a software, app, website, whatever it is, just for the sake, because it's a cool technology. I always tell people, tell me what is the main problem you're solving to me. If you are able to tell me what's the problem you are solving, then I would listen to you, because I was lucky enough to work on both sides of the table. So I was as a customer or a client, and I work on the vendor side as well. So this, dynamic of how a vendor would think about a customer and vice versa, I have, the view, or let's say the 360 view of it. So I can really also guide people on validating the market and making sure that they are introducing the right products, right services in the right timing also as well.
And from your perspective, what's kind of the most exciting thing that's up and coming with technology?
Of course, like AI, right? So AI is I would not say it's the next big thing. So AI has been with us for a long time now, as you know. So, and people, and even on my podcast, we make this, it became like kind of a repeating joke that people think that AI is ChatGPT. And we know no, AI existed before. Of course, OpenAI through ChatGPT, and later, what the Googles have done and what the Anthropic have done, they accelerated the exposure of AI to people, and people started to see new opportunities using the AI. And AI still, we are in the very early phases, I would say, especially with the generative AI, because the power of generative AI, I think still we didn't see all of it yet, although we have very powerful tools today, but we are just, starting. Now, the next things that I believe, so two things here. So there are other emerging technologies that are coming. A few days ago, Google, they announced this, breakthrough about the quantum chip, right? So this is big, and we're talking about solving a mathematical equation which required I cannot remember how many zeros they have put next to it. I think it's 10 to the power of 25, and now they just did it in minutes, right? So this is big, and if I combine this with what AI compute power is needed. So think about now what took maybe OpenAI. Remember OpenAI, they started working on, their LLMs very, very well back in time. I think it was 2016 or 17, right? So we're talking about now what have done in 7 years or 5 years, let's say. Now it can be done maybe in half day or maybe less. We don't know. So this is really exciting. So I see quantum, it's still early to talk about. Still people trying to find, what are the use cases. Now, of course, I started to see, which is I'm excited about, is the merging of other technologies with the AI and other technologies also as well. For example, now we start to see AI plus blockchain or AI plus IoT. All these mixing into the technologies is something I'm excited about, and I think we're gonna see more. One more thing in the AI, and this is I repeat always, I think people are not yet understanding where we are going. There is one thing that I repeated many times with many of my guests, and even I shared some articles about it. So there's the factor of AI plus automation. And I'm happy to see the term itself. It start to be used more by these AI, technology giants like OpenAI and Google, the agents.
Yeah.
Everyone is talking about agents now. I remember when I did a demo for something called Baby AGI, it was like still Feb or March 2023. It was still new. Even ChatGPT was new. And I remember that video get good hits because people wanted to say, hey, what's an agent, right? So agents are the next big thing within the AI landscape, because what I believe this will change the way how we work and we live.
Yeah.
So this is, I ask every single person who's listening or watching, go search and learn more about the AI agents, because this is what would change your life.
And speaking of guests, you're the host of the CTO Show, your podcast, but what inspired you to start a podcast, and what's the most rewarding aspect of engaging with other leaders in tech?
Sure. So the idea of having a podcast in general was with me for a long time, right? So, the podcast, especially in the US, when they started it, like in the late 2000s, I would say, and they became a thing, right? So I was like fascinated because, okay, it's not a radio show, right? And it's something that you can self-host, self-produce if you want. Anyway, busy with work, I didn't have the time. I attempted another try back in 2017. Again, I got dragged to another exciting project and I didn't do it. The COVID hit, and then I was almost about, so I wrote on paper because, it was just tries before and I didn't make it serious. 2020, where I start to put things on paper. So I start to think about a concept. I start to think, okay, how I would run it. But again, I didn't continue. And then when I was doing my year review, so every end of year, I sit with myself, sometimes I go for 2-3 days and I get disconnected. And I just start to put lists of things that should happen because they have been on the list with me for a long time. And the podcast popped up first. And I went back to what I wrote in 2020 and what kind of podcast I want to produce. And we were talking about, bridging the gap between tech and business. So I said should be the main theme of the podcast. Of course, multiple iteration from name perspective, what should I call it? Because I wanted also to mix not only this tech business aspect, I wanted to introduce the entrepreneurship and startups to it also as well. And I did it like a startup. So first the name. So I said, what could I call it? If I call it CIO, if I call it like something C-level, because I was seeing, the list of titles that I wanted, it was very long. And then I said, hold on one second. The name CTO stopped me. Okay, CTO, Chief Technology Officer. If we think about a Chief Technology Officer, if you go to Wikipedia, for example, or any definition website, they will tell you it's the guy who's responsible for, choosing the technology to drive the business. So exactly this is the profile that I wanted. In some companies, the CTO and CIOs, they are the same person, which is good. So he's the guy who have the business acumen plus, the technology knowledge. Fine. So we take the technology, we take the business, how it would fit the startups. And then, when I went, and people would know this, so every single startup, usually they start with two co-founders. So you have a CEO and a CTO, right? And the CEO, maybe he would be she would be responsible for the sales, marketing, the vision and all this. The CTO would be responsible for the technology, and he has to have leadership, or she has to have leadership skills, right? I said, okay, boom, that's it. so we're gonna call it the CTO Show with Mehmet, and this is how it started. The format also evolved with time. So I was planning to make it kind of a solo versions where I pick up a topic, and it came on time because ChatGPT just came by that time. So the first episode was aired on Jan 2023. So it was like picking some news and just putting my 2 cents, let's call it, on them and what I'm seeing and what I think would happen. Later on, I get bored from myself. So I said, okay, I think people need to hear a voice other than my voice. And someone told me like, why you don't have some guests? And I said, okay, how I can get guests? I don't know. I never done this before. Anyway, some search on the internet, found few places where I can find guests and so on. Recorded the first episode with someone else. It was very good. It was very well received. I felt myself, I have also I discovered another skill that I have, which is interviewing people. And people, they said, oh, you feel like you're doing this for a long time. So here we go. Now, I think by the time we are airing this, it's in Jan already. So we completed 2 years.
Wow.
And the reason you see like that much number of episodes, I don't know. As of the time of this recording, by the way, I do this transparency with the audience, and I'm doing this today with you, Francesca. So at the time of this recording, I released 420. Maybe by the time you release it will be like 430 or so. The reason there was so much episodes in 2023, because I really wanted to get as much information as possible out. So I was between my solo recordings plus the guest recording, I was crazy. I slowed down a little bit in 2024, so now it's aired just 2 days a week, and I think we gotta continue with 2 days a week for a while.
Amazing.
So this is the story.
Yes, and so as you say, through the podcast, you kind of champion that collaborative learning when it comes to tech. But why do you feel knowledge sharing is so essential when it comes to the tech ecosystem?
Before I come to this, one thing you asked me, I forget to answer you, which is like, what was the main benefits of doing this, right? So I tell people this is kind of a give back project for me. It's not and the unforeseen future, I would say it's not a commercial project for me. This is why I don't have any sponsors, right? So I tried at some stage, honestly, but I felt that the moment I'm gonna put a name, there will be some bias, so I decided not to do it. But on the other side, it grew my connection exponentially. So this was very, very big. Now, when it comes about sharing the knowledge and all this, so I believe that first of all, the podcast format itself, it's very interesting because, I used to listen and still listen to a lot of podcasts. So the beauty about it, and different from books, we're living now in a very fast moving world, right? So you can be on a metro or in bus or, just driving, going to work or maybe going to pick up your loved one from school or whatever. And you can listen to these bite-sized, I would say, talks, right? Which can give you a lot of insight. So I think this is why the podcast in general is very good medium to share knowledge. When it comes to tech, and I think what I believe, hopefully personally, and all my guests together, which I thank them very much today, for without them I would not have this show. Knowledge sharing in the technology specifically, it opens other people's mind, right? It happened many times where I received an email or a message on LinkedIn, people telling me, we listened to this guest, and because he mentioned this, we get inspired to do that, right? This sense of people getting the knowledge and consuming it, and technology is fast moving. So this is why we need to keep sharing, right? And my idea is, back to the previous conversation we were having about people who usually adopt the technology late, it's kind also to foster this tech community that can, I'm not saying to adopt the technology fast, but be aware of it, right? So let's take AI. We started to talk about AI on my show very, very early, before everyone was going big on the AI, because still ChatGPT, people were seeing it as just an experiment, right? I've seen in a different way. So I was lucky enough to have guests on the show who were like also have same kind mind as me. And here we go today, because we shared all this. I've seen people thriving because of that with AI. So this is where sharing the technology, fostering a community, encouraging people to go always discover. Don't accept the status quo, because see, it used to take 10 years, 20 years, maybe 30 years to change the status quo. Status quo today, by the time you air this episode, the status quo would be something else. So this is why, it's very important to have this mentality of knowledge sharing. I have this ambition, of people ask me why you do this, right? And why you share this? Because I believe, every one of us should have, of course, maybe you have it now, you don't have it now, I don't know, but should have this long-term vision and purpose, right? For me, my biggest, ambition, I would say, and goals is to be able to leave kind of a legacy for people to find the information easy. I come from in my childhood, it wasn't easy to find information, right? For me, there was no much people to help me to grasp some things. This is why many of the things that I did in life, I did a little bit late, because it took me time to learn these things. And if these resources were available, I'm pretty sure I would be in another place. So I say, avoiding other people to be stuck, like at some stage in my life where I was stuck, not finding, the information, people who can guide me, right? So this is the big thing I want to do. Of course, my ambition also to be able not only do this, from knowledge sharing perspective, no, but by acting perspective. So by being able to finance these startups, by being able to guide these startups and make them achieve their goals. So this is where my passion is, and the reason why I have this passion to startups, again, because I believe startups are and small businesses as well, so they are, like, I would say, the main blood of every economy. And if you have a healthy economy, so you have wealthy people, and you can get everyone have this feeling that we're contributing to the economy and we're living the life that we should be living also as well. So it's got a little bit philosophical, I know, but so it's making sure that everyone can live a happy and wealthy life, I would say.
We come on to the trending in tech round now. So a recent article in Semaphore said the UK faces significant challenges in modernising its infrastructure and fostering innovation, from revamping outdated rail networks to creating, regional innovation clusters. They're saying in the UK there needs to be a major overhaul. But given your experience outside of the UK, what do you think other nations have done successfully to leverage technology and innovation for growth? And how do you think back in the UK we could learn from those examples to improve our own approach?
I'll just say embrace technology, right? So I'll give you an example from the UAE where we are recording this episode. I'm living for the past almost 20 years now. So what UAE have done perfectly is they have embraced the technology, right? And they decided to put technology first, right? From government perspective. So everything today, for example, think about it. I'm gonna give you some examples. Everything you do today in Dubai and UAE is digital, right? So when I need, for example, to renew my ID card, I don't need to go physically to any place. I can do everything online. And when you do this on the government level, and when the government, the vision of Dubai was to become, the hub for technology, and this started the internet city back in the 2000. And when this comes from the top level up, so it goes and spread across all the other sectors as well. So now, because the government is doing this, now you see the private sector want to do the same. So you look at the banks, so banking system, the financial systems, they get upgraded to the latest and greatest. We go, for example, look at something like retail, same thing, right? So even when I believe when you came to Dubai, maybe you've seen it, like when you enter the gate, like you have these smart gates and all this, right? So it's about making the people's life easy. Unfortunately, what I've seen, I'm not sure about the UK, but what I've seen, like some of the economies that they were kind of left behind in this, they thought like, oh, we're gonna pay a lot of money for this, we're not doing it. But the return on investment, if you think about it, it's massive, it's huge.
And finally, we come on to our this or that.
My favorite.
Yes, so Mehmet, if you had to pick iPhone or Samsung?
iPhone.
And Spotify or Apple?
It's a tough one, but I would say Spotify.
And Netflix or cinema?
Cinema.
And laptops or tablets?
Laptops.
ChatGPT or virtual reality?
ChatGPT.
And video calls or voice notes?
Video calls.
And finally, if you could bring back one piece of tech that's either now evolved or it no longer exists, what would it be and why?
This is interesting. I think, if there's even any technology that's on my mind and it disappeared for a reason, because there is something better that evolved probably. But maybe I have some kind of a nostalgia, I would say, for this. It's not a technology, it's more, like these old game consoles.
Yes.
And for people, who never saw this, you should go and search. There was something called Kong, which is just like a 2 lines and one kind, like it's a ball and you play, it's a 2 players and you can play it. So it's like a nostalgia kind of thing, but it's not really a technology. So that's it.
No, I love that. Mehmet, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Francisca. Thank you very much for hosting me here today.